There is always something to learn from my guest, Nicki Collen, head coach at Baylor, locked on women's basketball. We're going to get to it. Hear a bit of everything starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, everyone, and happy Tuesday to you. I'm Howard Megdal, and I want to welcome you to Locked On Women's Basketball, where you can listen to the past, present, and future of women's basketball. We had more than 250,000 of you show up in November alone, the way we show up for you 6 days a week. And of course, it is not just me, it is the incredible team over at thenexthoops.com. We have over 100 reported pieces every single month. Sign up for a subscription like so many people have. We passed the 25 million reader mark in 2024 alone. It's $9 a month, $72 a year. You get all the stories right to your inbox, a steady stream of coverage from the greatest team around, as far as I'm concerned, thenexthoops.com. And through the years, we've had the opportunity to cover the great Nicki Collen in so many different contexts. I remember learning from you as an assistant in Connecticut when we had the chance to talk. You've had the opportunity now to lead this Baylor program to significant heights. We're going to get into what those heights look like here in 24-25, because it's a really interesting group that you've put together. Segment one, we're going to talk mostly about Baylor. Segment two, I want to get bigger picture with you and looking at where women's basketball has been and where it is going. Segment three, specifically for women in coaching. But Nicki, welcome to the show. Take me through, if you could, the early part of the season, why you decided to play such an easy schedule instead of challenging your team at all.
Yeah, I saw something of the number of teams that haven't played a true road game yet, and unfortunately, we weren't on that list. I think that we felt good about what we had coming back this season. Obviously, you do most of your scheduling before the portal, so certainly you may pick up a game or two after the portal. But I felt like with the addition of Aaronette Vonleh that we had a chance to really challenge ourselves. And I think we failed a couple of those tests, to be honest with you. I do think, I'm not big on making excuses. I think when we went to Oregon, we had just lost Jana Van Geitenbeek the game before, someone who was probably going to give us 25 minutes a game off the bench and was an emotional leader for us. Bella Fauntleroy, our best defender, our most versatile defender, the person that would have guarded Deja Kelly the majority of the game, goes down 1 minute and 15 seconds into the game, and we were hurting. I thought we played really selfish basketball against Indiana. When I think about our losses, and it wasn't that we have selfish kids, it's not that you don't learn from those situations, but I felt like we really veered away from what we're good at, and we had a lot of players trying to make plays for their team instead of making, screens and ball movement and things like that, And so I think, a year ago, we got off to this blazing hot start. We were 14-0. We had beaten Utah. We had beaten Texas at Texas. We had beaten Miami in a neutral site game. And then we hit our first adversity in January. And it was like we hit rock bottom so quickly that the thing I appreciate the most about the group I have right now is how coachable they are, and how I feel like the reality of adversity early could go a long ways towards us bouncing back. You add a player like Aaliyah Matharu that we're going to add in about a week. And all of a sudden, you get back some of what you lost from Jana, plus players have figured out the system. We do a lot of things differently when you put an Aaronette Vonleh in there compared to, say, a Dre Edwards, at the same position. So, it's taken some getting used to that way as well.
She has been efficient in a way that extends beyond even what Aaronette, I'm saying specifically, that she was in Arizona, that she was in Colorado, hitting over 63% of her shots so far. I know, and we talked about this a little bit during the offseason about the way she would be a difference maker. What sort of stood out from you, or from her game, seeing her play every day, that maybe you didn't see when you're watching her from afar or watching her on film?
Yeah, I think we're just tapping the surface. I think that's the toughest part about the portal And knowing you're getting someone for 1 year, it's like, okay, what do I maximize? Because can I really get her to grow to where I think she's capable of growing? And I think the thing about her, she played in a ton of Princeton stuff, obviously at Colorado, how they played, dropping down out of the high post, played with a playmaking point guard. But I think we're playing the ball to her more on the low post, getting her to understand her mismatches. But I think where I've seen something that I didn't know, her face-up game is a lot better. Not that I think she's going to go out and make 4 out of 10 threes all the time. But I think her ability to put the ball on the floor, she's an elite athlete, way better athlete than you think for her size. I thought probably her most athletic play of the season was against UNLV. Pick, short roll, face up, attack left, finish and one. I just think she has the ability to cover ground and finish. And so, the challenge for Nettie, which is kind of what everyone calls her, I think, is a consistency of impact. It's like she's so like if I want to put myself in her body sometimes and say, if I were her, I would go get 30 and 20 every game, but she kind of has this like deferring type mentality at times, where it's like, okay, I missed a shot. Now it's somebody else's turn. It's kind of like the advantage is still the advantage, my dear, and so getting her to understand that, saying you're going to be dominant and actually being dominant, like every possession is where she still needs to grow, because you see it, you see her ability, you see how she can put numbers up in a hurry. And then she can disappear, and we just can't have the disappearance, as the season goes along. But I think she's just been trying to find her way, and you're talking about her third system in 4 years. And so I think that's some of it. But, I always say, like, one of my biggest challenges as a coach, and has always been, is like, you can't want it for someone more than they want it for themselves. But what you can do is get them to push past their comfort zone, get them to push past that point where they think, okay, this is my best. No, it's not. There's a little bit more in you. And maybe I'll never get you to where I think you're actually capable of getting to, especially in 9 months, but ultimately, can I get you to show a little bit more of what you're capable of, so that you can take that, that confidence, that newfound space to the next level, which is where she needs to be.
I have to say, and again, point of personal privilege, you make sure that your players are not just ready to perform for you, but you have them ready to perform when they graduate, when they move on. And so that's significant when you think about what she can be at the next level. As you're talking about it, I'm thinking about, and just sort of circling back to conversations you and I had forever ago about a young Jonquel Jones, about trying to take advantage of and maximize what she can be physically. And it also seems to me to inform what Darianna Littlepage-Buggs is doing for you, and taking that next step forward, averaging a double-double so far this year. But her shot chart is just this thing of beauty. You're watching her spread her wings in real time and being able to expand her offensive repertoire. How much of that is the instructions that you and the coaching staff gave her heading into the offseason? How much of that is just, a player coming into her own and recognizing these things on the floor?
Yeah, I think it's a little of both. I think that, when you think about Buggs, she's my security blanket. She's the player for me that never looks tired, even when she is. She's her success is driven by her energy. She's still not the biggest, she's still not the strongest, but she's the most committed to getting to the glass. She plays to her strengths. I think she's someone that the thing that I love the most about her, she's a mover. The ball doesn't stick with her. I don't have to run plays for her to get shots. They come because she moves. She's a ball mover. She moves her body. She moves into open space. So often you're like, hey, if you guys will just get in a screen and roll, good things will happen. Like, look what Buggs is doing, Right. And so I think the great thing about her is we really focused this offseason, and we tried to a year ago as well. But I think, it's sometimes it all happens in steps, and that's the beauty of not going to the portal and having someone and watching them grow and them each year become more confident in not only who they are, but who they are in your system, the confidence they have defensively, like her confidence has exploded defensively as well. We can move around on matchups, which we had a hard time a year ago. But I think she's someone who was like, a year ago, you started to shoot threes in practice, but you still didn't make any. Now we've got to get you to the point that you shoot enough of them. And I played her all preseason at the three, all preseason. Like there wasn't, some of that is by nature of if we've got to go 5-on-5 with the roster I have right now, she's got to be a small forward and so does Bella,
Right.
And then when they play together, Buggs plays more of the power forward, Bella plays more of the small forward, but Buggs has played minutes now at the small forward when Bella goes out and we want to stay big and so I think from that perspective, it was about her seeing the ball go in a game. That first three went in and our bench went crazy because everybody knows how she's worked for that moment. Right. And so it's still about, hey, like getting her to understand you're a good mid-range shooter, but you're a better mid-range shooter when you bounce it. Like the catch and shoot in the mid-range is just okay. But the bounce into the mid-range, even if you bounce it in place, everything about her is balance and rhythm. And so it's the same way from three. If she gets the balance and rhythm, she can shoot it, and so there are shots she's good at and shots she's not as good at, but she owns kind of like, this is what I do. And this is what I do well. And so she's become a better passer. She's become a better ball handler over the course of her career. I could go on and on because I think the thing about her is like, she's just never had a bad day. Like she's had a bad game or she's had a bad practice, but it's never because she didn't show up ready to go. It's not because she doesn't want to be there. If she doesn't want to be there, she fakes it. Like you never have to coach effort with her. You never have to go, okay, what's wrong with you? Like with most players, there's a game or two where you're like, hey, what's going on? Like, you're not you, like you're not boogieing like you. She doesn't have that. She doesn't have that gene.
And she hasn't, I mean, from day one, she was north of 26% of her available defensive rebounds. As somebody who just was always bringing that effort and manifesting it in different ways. It's fascinating. I want to get to a lot more. I want to talk about what you're doing as a team right now, especially on defense, the multi-part playmaking offensive side of things. Much more to come with Nicki Collen. I'm Howard Megdal. You're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. And FanDuel has a deal right now for something called the NFL. It's apparently the National Football League. It happens on Sundays. Maybe you tune in between women's basketball games. There's a lot of good things to watch women's basketball on Sunday. But yeah, NFL, they don't dribble. Apparently, it's passing or running. And at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, you can even bet on NFL action. If you bet $5, you get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Word to the wise, do not bet on the New York Giants. I just can't stress that enough. My crying extended family can reinforce that as well. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. Oh my God, Tommy DeVito hasn't completed a pass. Can that be true? Go to the FanDuel app and they'll show you, yes, it's probably true. So visit FanDuel.com today. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more at FanDuel.com, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. It's a tough time in New York Giants land, I can tell you that. Not
Down here in Dallas too, I
know. It's
tough on the Cowboy fans for sure.
Philadelphia, the Eagles fans are very, very smart these days, that's for sure. Well, back here with Nicki Collen, head coach at Baylor, talking about her Bears there's two parts to this I think are really interesting. And I don't know how else to say it other than like it was a matter of like when, not if, you were going to do it in precisely this way. And so I want to start on the defensive end. You guys were top 20 in defensive efficiency last year. You are again this year. Again, when I look at how are players showing up to play for a coach, that's one of the numbers that I look at and I see it. And so far, and I know there's two elements to it. There's implementation of the system and communication, talking together, and then there's the defensive effort How are you feeling on both fronts so far when you look at what your team is doing defensively?
Yeah, I think we've been a little up and down. I think that and full transparency, like I know the reason I'm sitting where I'm sitting now is because I had the autonomy to run defense at
Mhm.
Arkansas, the autonomy to run defense in Connecticut, and won a lot of games that first year in Atlanta, being a really good defensive team. And so I care a lot about it, but I also care about developing my staff. And I think, the first year we were here, it was my defense. I taught it. I let Tony Green have some say. Year two, it was my defense. I let him be in the huddle. Last year I let him take it over, and it's ultimately, I have an opinion and I give my opinion when necessary, but I allow him to really dive in and run and do the drill work and make the adjustments. And so, I think it's been a big change. We were a little more gap driven when I was in charge. It's much more W related, situationally deny, gap. We're much more aggressive, ball pressure, denial, help side, big time hole, aggressive, hedging ball screens. So, I think our focus has changed, but what I will say is, the one thing about me is you're not going to talk about our program and not talk about how we're going to play at both ends. Like we're not a program that has to outscore you. We're not a program that's first to 50. I want to be able to win the game however we need to win it. I look at the UNLV game this weekend, and it was, I would argue, good offense and bad defense at the same time on both teams, for both teams in the first half. And it was pretty offensively. It was frustrating defensively. Then the game came to a grinding halt in the second half. The defensive effort was really, really good. We were missing free throws, which didn't allow us to create separation. But we made a lot of defensive substitutions in the second half as a result of how the game was being played. And that's what's important to me. It's like, I don't want to get to March and not be able to outscore a team. I mean, I think if you score a lot of points, I'm never going to look at how many points did we give up. I want to know, points per possession. I want to know efficiency stats, because if you're going to drive up possessions, you're going to drive up scoring, and you could be playing the same defense or better defense. So, really focusing analytically on the right things for our team. I think defensive rebounding percentage, are we giving teams one shot? Are we taking the three away if they're a 3-point shooting team? I don't care if they shoot threes, if they're not a good 3-point shooting team. Ultimately it's about being smart on the statistics and saying, okay, if a bad 3-point shooting team makes some against us, okay, that's what we were willing to give up, And so I think it's a little bit of that, but I want our players to be ready on both sides of the ball when they leave here, if they want to play at the next level. And I also think that's how you win in March. You win the games in front of you that, if you need to outscore someone, then you outscore them. If you need to get stops, like, nothing makes me more uncomfortable. I think back to my first year as a head coach in Atlanta, and we were leading the league in almost every defensive statistic. And the reason we went on the run that we win is we got into the top half offensively. We were that asterisk, the other top teams in the league were good offensively, and we were just elite defensively. But we played Vegas in Atlanta, and Asia was young, and McBride and that crew. And I think we beat them like 110 to 100. And I feel like I sweat more in that game than I've ever sweat, because I felt like we can't get a stop. We absolutely cannot get a stop. And nothing makes me more uncomfortable as a head coach and not thinking we can get a stop. Like, I don't want to be trading baskets. Like, I love to score. I love coaching offense, but it makes me nervous when I feel like we cannot stop this team. And so, especially when you don't have necessarily an elite offensive team like we did that year, you feel like eventually we're going to stop making shots, and then we're going to be in trouble, And so, that's how I would talk about, like, our philosophy. Tony gets a lot of autonomy to really game plan on that side. But it's still, our players know, like, I know there are teams in this country that split up, assignments that way, but players tend to know, like, I'm going to play if the head coach coaches more of the offense, like, that's the most important thing. Like, these kids know, like, if you don't play defense, you're going to sit down. Like, it doesn't matter that I love X's and O's and a great ATO. Like you better compete at the defensive end and rebound, or you're going to come sit down.
That is ultimately what happened in 2018. I will just point out, yeah, you won a couple of games. You were WNBA Coach of the Year that year. So let's just flag that in addition. But it was, again, it's a team, like I said, that is so clearly you on the defensive end, also on the offensive end. So I want to get into your dual playmakers. And I also want to talk bigger picture in segment 3, all about where women's basketball writ large is as we head into 2025. So back with more with Nicki Collen in just a moment. I'm Howard Megdal. You're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by Mint Mobile. And Mint Mobile gives you the opportunity to never have to think about your wireless plan. With a lot of the big wireless providers, what you see is never what you get. There's always, in that first month's bill, the price gets higher. There's extra fees. There's lots of different things that come into it. Mint Mobile, really simple. You say $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. You get $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. You never have to be on with customer service to try and negotiate the thing you've already negotiated. All the plans at Mint Mobile come with high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, and it's delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. So how do you do this? Go to mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnba to cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedonnba. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speeds slower than above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. Back here in segment 3, talking to Nicki Collen, head coach at Baylor. And boy, we're both having flashbacks to that 2018 Atlanta Dream Team. I remember covering you in those playoffs. There was a playoff game. I'm trying to remember because, this is in the days where WNBA playoff games get moved around. I think, wasn't one of the games against the Mystics at a Chipotle in Bethesda, Maryland? Is that where they held it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely we played at GW. That's for sure. Yeah.
And then George Mason was the finals that year. I mean, it was a very different time. It was the type of thing that no one would conceive of as possible today. And I know obviously you're getting to experience it yourself at the collegiate level. You're also getting to watch and see where we have seen the WNBA go, and just what's been the most surprising thing where you say, we always thought this would arrive, but like, what's the thing where it's like, wow, that happened and sooner and bigger than I even thought?
I think one of the things that I genuinely was surprised by, we take our team up to Dallas every year. When Melissa comes to town, it gives us a chance. This year, Kalani, Odyssey, all the former Baylor players, we've gone up to CBG. I think it's important for our players to experience the WNBA game and to pay attention to it, but also to support former Baylor alums. And we were grabbing a meal with our team up in Dallas and Arlington, and genuinely, I knew of the Clark phenomenon, but it was like being there, seeing the number of 22 T-shirts and jerseys, and it was just from all over. It was local people that had become fans of hers. It's I'm not going to compare it to Taylor Swift, but it has a little bit of a feel of like the Swifties were out, and when our game goes from being like this niche market where we see it as really valuable, but we're trying to grow it to markets outside of just this like grassroots women's basketball space. I think she's someone that, as good as the superstars in our league have been, have taken the sport into areas, when you have country music stars wearing her jersey, when you have she's in spaces, she's put our game in spaces that it's never been in before. And that's what's amazing, and I know our players are asked a lot about this growth in women's basketball and how they feel about it and all of that. And I always I don't get on my soapbox very often. I like to believe I'm much, I look younger than I am and all of that. But the reality is, like, a lot of times you'll hear young people say, well, it's awesome because we work really, really hard, and so to see the fruits of the labor and all of that, and it's kind of like, but you know what? There's a lot of people in this world that work really hard. I don't care if they're landscapers. I don't care. Like, working hard is just what you do to be good at your craft, period. Like, it doesn't matter what. So to me, it's not about being recognized for your hard work. It's about being given a platform to show people how good you are at your craft, and that it's worth watching. And so to me, those things are very, very different, because players have always worked hard. I don't look at my team and think they're working harder than my teams at Purdue or Marquette did. Like, gosh, we didn't have male practice squads. Like, we were going against each other every day. Like, that Final Four team at Purdue that I was on, like the white team, man, we were set out to beat the black team butt every single day in practice. And so I don't feel like it's necessarily about hard work. I think that's just the bare minimum. Like, that's what you should do to be in this space. But I think it's about this unique platform where people care about all the work that you're putting in, because they see that it's worth it. They see that it's worth watching, that it is a standalone product in and of itself. And so I think that's the most special thing to me when I think about where the game is going, and the reception that it's getting. It's like, it's always been here. It doesn't look better because of Clark. Now, is she special? Is she unique? Is she the Steph Curry pull up? Like, she is fun to watch. I mean, I sat at the game when she had 19 assists and she dropped the behind the back pass right in front of me courtside. Like, special, fun. Like, I get it. I'm a basketball nerd. I love watching her play like everybody else. But I also loved watching Diana and Sue and Stewie and Asia and gosh forbid, Deanna Nolan. Like, let's go back and talk about Cappy and Deanna. And like, those guys were elite jump shooters and fun to watch. And, I remember one of the hardest things to do in that 2018 season when Cappy was waived in LA was not pick her up, because she was one of my favorite players to watch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm like a little kid and I have a chance to coach Cappy, and then I'm like, but no, this team is too good. I don't want to upset the apple cart. But I just remember thinking, like, as a basketball fan, as a basketball person, so we've had elite players. They just didn't have the platform. And so I think what Caitlin's going to do is allow everyone else's platform to get that much bigger.
Do you think also there's this carryover effect into the coaching opportunities for women in coaching? And I provide the context of there are more opportunities to flow back and forth between the pros and college than we've seen ever before. There are just literally more teams. There are literally more staff positions on each team. I wonder how much you think that's going to change the balance in who is doing the leading into the future.
Yeah, I hope it is. I think about why I got into coaching, and I think right now coaching is pretty lucrative. But I can tell you, my first coaching job I took at 24 for $18,000 and left a $50,000 a year engineering opportunity to do it. Like, I did not get in this game for the money. I got into it because I loved the game itself and wanted to give back to it. And just, it was so much a part of my DNA and who I was and how I thought. But I think about the opportunities overall, even to swing. I think we've talked before. If you'd asked me 3 months before I took this job where I saw myself next, I would tell you it was to be in the NBA, and when my kids were grown and I wasn't worried about, playing 100 games or what probably feels like to all those NBA people is 100 games, that it was kind of the pinnacle, having spent a lot of time around the Hawks. And now you see women in the NBA, you see NBA people flow into the W because it is more lucrative, because there's a little more work-life balance, which there is none of in college right now. I get it. Like, I get why, if the money is right, why people will make that move. And I also think it won't be the place for college coaches who have done something that they can't get a college coaching job anymore, or they can't, I do think you're going to see this natural flow, because the nature of college women's basketball and college athletics in general, It's 100 hours a week, every week. There's no off season. It's the portal, it's summer school, it's recruiting. Like, there is no downtime. So you have to love it. And if there's opportunity to do what you love in a different way, then people are going to start to make those decisions. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that not just because Lynn and Carl love the league, and I think they do. I know both of them, but I also think it's like, this is a unique opportunity. And so, I love that it's not viewed as a step down or a step up. It's just like, what is best for the individual in terms of what their individual goals are and what they want, both personally and professionally. So I think that's what's really cool about it.
It's mind-blowing to see so many good people with options, and I see it at the player level, but it cannot be understated how much it matters at the coaching level too. We're about out of time, but I just, obviously wanted to point out the fact that you have the Big 12 season coming up on rushing. At least you're finished with all your non-conference tests, right? You don't have, it's not like you have to face
we have
Lauren
one
Betts
more.
and
Yeah,
UCLA,
we got Utah Tech,
right?
our kids game coming out of finals, and then it's Kansas. Yeah.
And then UCLA at a neutral site, which
Right?
playing that at in the very best state, which is New Jersey, of course. So excited to see your team up close. Always so much to talk about with Nicki Collen. Nicki, I appreciate your time.
Have me back
always.
anytime. I love to talk hoops.
We will. And to our listeners, I thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We're back to you with more tomorrow, the way we are 6 days a week. Until then, I'm Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful Tuesday.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.